population rate with, Nigeria's own market capitalization is just about $200 million compared to $2 trillion for France, $1 trillion for Brazil, $3.5 trillion for UK. It means the percentage of people in the country working right now in Nigeria is not so different from all those countries. However, the production rate, that the economic benefit of those labor in other countries is almost times 10, times 20 of what we have in Nigeria. So it means people are working more for less in Nigeria, producing less, contributing less to the economy compared to other parts of the country. So other parts of the world rather. So when you have such analytic system, it doesn't create anything positive other than blue resentment among the group that has been excluded, and this will only get to a boiling point. And I hope we do not reach that boiling point before correct our mistake.
I hope so too. It's 31 minutes past 4. This is the Situation Room on Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. The conversation is on Nigeria's definition of democracy as we commemorate Democracy Day 25 years after. My name is Sage Babalola. The conversation has been with African Affairs Analyst, Managing Editor, Africa Liberty, Ibrahim Anoba. We've spoken extensively about democracy, the arms of government, what it means to the average Nigerian, the dividends of democracy. Are we truly seeing it? Are we getting proper representation? Even those at the helm of affairs, how are they managing the power that has been afforded to them? These are some of the conversations we've had so far, and we would progress with the conversation by stepping out a little bit outside Nigeria and have a conversation, a broader conversation of democracy in Africa, because we don't exist in isolation. We are part of a larger structure. Now, Mr. Anoba, we understand that Africa is home to a range of democratic experiences. It's not the same. The template might be similar, the foundation might be similar, but it's not really the same across Africa. And as much as the average level of democracy at the continental level, it remains relatively stable. There's been some sort of democratic decline, and it's sort of underway in sub-Saharan Africa. We've seen election postponement in countries like Somalia, Ethiopia. We see restriction imposed before elections. Look at Mozambique, even Chad, our neighbor here. There's Congo. I mean, it's no way to talk about this and not mention Congo. Rwanda, although it might not be much on the radar because they're making a lot of progress, but we've seen the West many times describe Kagame, the president, as some sort of dictator. He's been there since 2000. There's hardly any opposition there, and I could go on and on and on. But being the expert here, can you elucidate on this so-called democracy that's being practiced across Africa, and let's juxtapose it to what is obtainable here in Nigeria?
Thank you. We should be having this. This conversation should be about how Nigeria should be leading the way in terms of being a democracy bastion or a replica for what other countries in Africa should look up to. But I don't think that's the case.
Right.
As I said earlier, Ghana and Senegal are pretty much the ideal democracies. I mean, South Africa too. In Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Africa. This are what you want to look at as democracy. Recently, when President Macky Sall in Senegal tried to do what our own president, former President Obasanjo did in 2003 by trying to work his way into a third term, there was an unprecedented uprising in Senegal, and the result of that uprising is the election of a vibrant young politician that is very much a breath of fresh air from what Senegal had since independence. So we can look at countries like that. Senegal, Ghana is going to have its own election later in December of this year. So those are examples people should look at. People are not even looking at Nigeria anymore, for example, because our elections are questionable. So in Africa, I think this year we're supposed to have. We've had, I think, maybe like some elections, but we should be having over 15 elections this year. Most popular you have among Nigerians in any ways. You have Ghana coming up in December, as I said earlier. Mali's election should be later in the year as well. Algeria's election is upcoming in September. Tunisia, Botswana, Somaliland, Namibia, Guinea-Bissau, South Sudan, all these are still going to be coming up. Rwanda and Mauritania. So it's a strong election season for Africa, and many of these countries are at a point where the success of this election will determine how much they continue as a union or as a democracy. For example, in South Sudan, and Mali, there has been tremendous political unrest in those countries. And people are looking up to this election to bring people together. So there are bigger stakes about union, continuation of union, or stakes about economic reality. If you look at countries like Somaliland, or countries like Namibia, those are countries where you need some major economic reforms. In terms of security, you're looking at countries like Mozambique. Mozambique has been bewildered by many terrorists in the recent years, and they are looking to this election as a way to correct that, to bring about security to in their country. So there are different stakes across the continent. But I think we have to lay to rest the idea that Nigeria is the giant of Africa when it comes to democracy or political structuring. No, we are not. We should be learning from countries like Ghana and Senegal, and be humble enough to agree that we are flawed, to understand that we need to learn. And until we do that, I don't think there'll be much improvement. But I think we should be glad as Africans that actually there are some democracies that are encouraging at this point. As I've mentioned, Ghana, Senegal are the leading ones.
Right. Well, still on looking at the broader picture, let me use your last take on democracy in Africa to start the conversation of recurring coup in Africa. Sudan sort of tops the list as the African country with the most coups, attempted and successful. Niger, Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Gabon. Some of these countries have gone as far as pulling out of ECOWAS, or at least threatening to. There's still the whole conversation about, okay, what can we do? How do we reach a resolution? But then the junta, they always claim that the democratic process or the democratic system have yielded little to no progress. And if you check the economy and the quality of life in these countries that are currently under the junta, you can't really argue that they're wrong, unfortunately. So what, according to you, would you say is responsible for this trend of coups in Africa, and what lessons do you think we as a country, Nigeria, should start learning from these experiences of the countries that are around us?
So this is one question that Nigerians love to run away from. When we hear about military junta, we just say, well, that's not going to happen in Nigeria. Of course, we hope and pray every day that it doesn't happen.
Of course.
But the reality is that those countries where we've had junta in the last few years, if you look at the economic realities, the political realities in those countries, they were not too far from what Nigeria is experiencing right now. The Malians and Burkinabes, or the Guineans, these people were, they try, they persevere under some serious abuse of human rights under their government. I mean, the story of Mali is even much more crazier. Sudan, with Omar al-Bashir for many years. So there was gross abuse of human rights, deep mistrust of the government in those countries, and more importantly, the economies of those countries were in shambles. I mean, tell me if these things are not similar to what we've had in Nigeria in the last few years. So if those, of course, we cannot neglect the fact that these were mostly former French colonies, and there is a strong component that has to do with French imperialism for those coups to have happened. Yes, we cannot neglect that. However, many of the reasons why I laid before that, many of them are obtainable in Nigeria right now. So when we think about what happened in those countries, and we think Nigeria is some way immune, we somehow have a vaccine that's going to prevent us from that, we are really not helping ourselves. Of course, we do not hope that comes to happen to us, but we have to correct many things that is wrong right now. So if you look at the poverty rate in the country, I mean, you have about 87 million people in Nigeria right now below the poverty line, as defined by the World Bank. That's 39% of the country. 39%, almost 40% of the country. Can you imagine that? When you have 40% of your people languishing in poverty, and the life expectancy is not even close to 50 anymore. The life expectancy in Nigeria is about 45.
50, yeah.
Imagine that. So all these things these were the things that were happening in Mali, actually happening in Burkina Faso. And to think that Nigeria is somewhere a different place where people are not interested, it's going to get to a point where people have to demand change. And I hope that change comes in terms of the ballot, not something else.
Well, we're still having conversations about democracy, and now let's talk about how we can, I don't know if the right word is domesticate democracy, and I would explain. The former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, he has written many times about the need to consider an Afro-democracy, a form of democracy that takes into considerations the peculiarities of our country rather than the Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V way that we practice it. Or like you said, maybe we shouldn't say we copied from the West, but we sort of use their template. What are your thoughts? What do you say, or would you say, rather, let me put it this way, that our expectations of liberal democracy is unrealistic, and maybe it's time for us to truly consider altering it a little bit to suit our reality here in Nigeria and maybe in the broader sense in Africa? What is your take on this idea of Afro-democracy as it's being tagged?
So again, as I said, the democracy in Africa is far. In Nigeria, it's not even in existence. The only thing that we have to show for it is the fact that we have a place called the National Assembly. We have something called elections every 4 years. Apart from that, I mean, every other thing is not good enough to show for it. So, of course, the idea of liberal democracy, as it is defined today, was a large extent copied from the West. That doesn't mean that we do not have tenets of democracy in Nigeria or in Africa before colonial rule. Of course, many of our indigenous institutions or pre-colonial societies were very democratized. In fact, more democratized than the way you define democracy today. But the problem is that when you have democracy that is supposed to serve, liberal democracy that's supposed to serve the people, that is supposed to make equality much more a pronounced phenomenon, that is supposed to make the economy much more open, but everything is happening in the reverse, then democracy becomes questionable. As a matter of fact, when there were coups in Burkina Faso and Mali, you see people went to the street and were jubilating. It is one of the most worrying signs I've ever seen in my life as an African affairs analyst, to see people go into the streets and be happy. Not in one country, not in two countries, not in three countries. Almost all the countries where we have coups, people have gone into the street and celebrate. I mean, these are also countries where you have some of the most brutal, some of the most vile military regimes in the past. So is it that people do not know history anymore? No, they do. It's because they are frustrated with the civilian rule. It's because they are frustrated with the executive not changing the status quo before the military jump into power. We do not want that in Nigeria. That's why we are begging the federal government to think deeply about the state of the country. It's not enough to appoint people that you think they have degrees from Harvard and Yale, or people who are much more experienced in running the government. It's not important about the names of the people. It's important about what the people themselves, the general public, think of the people you have appointed. People think the government right now at this point have appointed a set of people who have been compensated for their political contributions during an election, not because of their competency. So if that is the case, we do not have experts to run the economy. The people you have appointed as financial or finance ministers or central bank people are not people who have experience in those fields to a large extent. So I just want to tell me that Nigeria doesn't have economy. I've studied in the US for years. You go to an average economics class in Washington D.C., at the University of Washington D.C., most likely you have Nigerian faculties there or Nigerian students. Are you going to tell me for all these years we haven't produced strong economists, financial analysts that can help us back home? That's not the case. So it goes back to this elitist exclusionary system. So if the elite keep excluding the people, keep giving the people the vibe that comes up as we are not important, you're going to keep having resentment towards the government. I think we're going to keep asking questions. But I hope these questions are being asked in a very polite way, without massive protests, without revolutionary sentiments, but through election ballots, through questioning your representatives, through coming to radio, writing newspaper articles. So I mean, this is the reality we have to face as a country.
All right. Speaking of the country, let's come back home a little bit. Nigeria is a very ethnically diverse country. like you said, over 371 ethnic groups, and we're just as religiously diverse. And this diversity that is supposed to be something of a unifying factor, right, has been weaponized, and it has been used to draw a wedge and even widen the gap between us as a people. We as a people who are supposed to be the primary beneficiaries of democracy can barely agree amongst ourselves. Everyone wants to be ahead at the same time. There's this illusion that if you have people from your tribe, people who have the same religious beliefs as yourself at the helm of affairs, it's going to automatically translate to more development for your people. But then there's talks of marginalization, etc. Again, that's a conversation for another time. Let's talk about how our ethno-religious sentiments continue to empower those who we should be jointly holding accountable for deviating from the original provisions of democracy. The fact that we ourselves might unknowingly be a catalyst to this problem, and then those at the helm of affairs are too busy making a mess of democracy because we, the people that should be jointly holding them to account and demanding that they do what we expect from them, are too divided along our ethnic and religious lines or sentiments.
So this is a very deeply concerning question just asked. I wonder why, and this might sound kind of funny, but I wonder why we do not, whenever the Super Eagles is playing, we do not say we want a Yoruba coach or an Igbo coach.
We don't care at that
or
point.
Whenever you exactly, or when it's time to, when a Nigerian is in distress abroad, people rally around on social media, even in person, to help that person, regardless of the Igbo or the, well, Dr. Onyema of Air Peace was having issues with this whole British airline flying into London problem. People came to his defense, regardless of the so-called tribe or ethnicity. So it means that, could it be the case that these ethnic divisions are being fermented by the ruling class to keep us divided? It could be the case. Could it also be the case that people only think about ethnic divisions when they are scared or when they feel as though they have been excluded? You ask an average person in Ambra, they will tell you they do not feel as though the government represents them. They don't think they belong, or they are represented in the government. You ask a Yoruba person in southwest Nigeria, they will tell you, regardless of the fact that we have someone from a place that is in the government, we do not even think we've had enough time to spend in the government up until when President Tinubu came in. You go to the north, people will still tell you they believe they should be in power. So there's always a sentiment about people need to be in power based on their ethnic division. When that is the center of your national thinking, then it's a fundamental problem. You look at any proper democracy, there's not even a proper democracy, but democracies that are better than us in Africa. In Ghana, I don't think you hear that quite often. In Senegal, I do not think you hear that quite often too. These are equally diverse countries. Maybe not as diverse as Nigeria, but there is diversity in those two countries. So the problem is that we've had, of course, we have ethnic divisions, deeply visible ones. However, people will not be concerned about their ethnic division if they feel as though the government will work for them. It's almost the case that we are exchanging based on ethnic group. You have a president from the north come into power for 8 years, and afterward you give it to someone from the south, and that person from the south bring in people from the south to rule the government. I mean, how are you going to supposed to show people from the north or the south that you are a government that represents them when your minister of power, minister of security, all those people are from your own region? So it seems as though this elite group are the one causing the problem for us. They have kept a category of people in power from their own ethnic division, from their own political party, from their own caucus to perpetuate their stay in power, to keep the resources of the country shared within that same space. These are dangerous realities that we really have to address.
I mean, yeah, recently we had a group of lawmakers in the House of Representatives, led by one Honorable ዄ who proposed certain changes that we should consider adopting, constitution alterations that would sort of provide a rotation of executive powers among the 6 geopolitical zones, having 2 vice presidents, one from the south, one from the north. Gubernatorial elections should be held at the same time. It will help us reduce cost of governance. He went on and on about all the many pros and cons. But then, just like you said, all of these things wouldn't matter. They wouldn't have been subject to conversation, right? If people enjoyed the dividends of democracy, they enjoyed governance, regardless of the ethnic group or the religion being practiced by the person who is making all of these decisions. I 100% agree with you. Well, it's still Situation Room. You've been hearing the voice of African Affairs Analyst, Managing Editor, African Liberty, Ibrahim Anoba. We've been talking for over 40 minutes now, talking about or trying to get a sense of what democracy means to the average Nigerian. We're asking questions, what is Nigeria's definition of democracy? And we have been addressing major talking points, and we still have many more conversations to have, or at least would have a dialogue as much as time affords us on the program today. It is Situation Room on mainland 98.3 FM. My name is Sage Babalola. Mr. Anoba, let's have a conversation about the economy. The People's Republic of China, it can be considered the greatest and maybe even the most relevant non-democratic nation at this time, for reasons we very well know. They've stamped their name in the books of global economic development, although, yeah, they have their own issues. We all do. But many successful and thriving countries don't practice democracy. And so it sort of begs the question, does the continued practice of democracy truly offer a corresponding and commensurate boost in national economy? Because if it does, why is it so difficult for us here in Nigeria to prove it? And a disclaimer, I am not in any way insinuating anything that would be detrimental to our democratic prosperity as it is right now. But then there are figures, Mr. Anoba, the inflation figures, the exchange rates, the number of out-of-school children, the GDP growth, or, well, decline as it is, etc. All are at alarming rates at this time. So what truly has been the effect of this democratic system of government on our economy? And why is it that countries that don't even claim this system seems to be thriving more economically?
So this is the most trying time for democracies globally. I mean, this is even more than Nigeria. The future of democracy has not been so bleak, questionable as we have now. The countries that, as you said, do not seem to be democratic are pretty much functioning strongly.
Right.
China is a case in point, as you mentioned, which is scary. China is a mixture of a free market and also a deeply regulatorily centralized economy.
Yeah.
They do not have democracy as you would define democracy, but it seems to be the fastest rising economy right now. Almost like 5 out of 10 of every manufactured good in the world right now comes from China, roughly. So you look at that case, then you look at the ongoing crisis in the U.S., the never-ending crisis with democracy in the UK, and the craziness coming out of the Middle East with Israel, supposed to be a democracy, committing what the International Criminal International Court of Justice is calling deep human rights violations. These are supposed to be democracies, but they seems to be having issues. And you look at countries like Russia, it seems to be winning the war in Ukraine. It's not a proper democracy in the democratic sense. China, as we mentioned, you come to Africa, people will always refer to Rwanda.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from elections, I don't think there is too much too much to pick up as democracy in Rwanda. It's pretty much an authoritarian state. So you look at South Africa, supposedly democracy is in crisis. So it seems as though those democracies are having problems, those that are not democracies are having prosperity.
Right.
So people are questioning democracy in itself. So
how do we defend
at some point.
this democracy?
But then the thing is, why does it have to be democracy in terms of how America operates democracy? I just feel so sick whenever I realize that our democracy is modeled after America. I mean, the Nigeria of 1960 and 2024 is no way compared to America of 1776, where America become America in terms of the United States. So I don't know why our parliament or executive or judiciary has to be modeled after a country that has been around for that long, or that is so much different culturally, economically from us. Like, this is time for African countries to look inward and look at systems of government that favors their own people, that will serve their own interests. Insofar the system of government recognize the rule of law, periodic elections, or and human rights. I don't care if it's democracy or an alternative. Or insofar it's liberal, insofar it's open, it's plural system. So again, it's because we've gotten lost in this idea of we want to be democratized. We want to follow the Western line of being open democracy, and we're not democratic in Africa. Nigeria is not a democracy that you want to look at and say this is the proper definition of democracy. Apart from elections or having a parliament, we have things we can work on. So Nigeria is one of the most promising countries you have in the world. Nigerians are one of the most excellent producers of ideas in the world. So there's a lot of promise there. We love each other in this country, apart from when it comes to election or when people are scared. Genuinely, we love each other. We have a lot of things that can make us a superpower. So it's a matter of having honest leadership, bringing people together, and seeing how this union can work. We just have to make it work. We do not have any other option. We have no other place to go. Even if you are in the diaspora, you always want to come back home because that's where your ancestors are. That's where people that look like you are. So we just have to make it work.
Well, we're due for a break in about 3 minutes, and I feel like if we kick off a conversation right now or try to answer another question, we probably would overstep and use the time because we have to take the headline news at 5 p.m. But then we would let you go for a few minutes, take the headline news, a few commercials. We'll bring you back on, talk to you for some 5 minutes so that we can conclude by talking about the things we need to do to strengthen our democratic institution. Because as much as we highlight all the many problems, the plethora of issues and deficiencies and impediments to our democracy, it's without any cause. It's an effort in futility if at the end of the day we don't offer or at least attempt to prefer a solution to the problem. So that's what we're going to conclude it. But for now, we'll let you go very briefly. Ibrahim Anoba, please bear with us, but we'll bring you on right after the commercials to conclude the conversation, like I said before, by discussing extensively how we can indeed strengthen our democratic institutions in Nigeria. The Situation Room continues. My name is Sage Babalola. I will take the headline news at 5. We'll come back, finish up with Ibrahim Anoba, who is an African Affairs analyst, the managing editor of African Liberty. And then we open the phone lines and also take your submission. Do you agree with our analyst? Do you have conflicting opinions, or do you have perspectives that you think we should consider moving forward in the conversation? Don't go anywhere. This is Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. We'll be right back.
Things seem anxious and uncertain. I understand the hardship you face. I wish there were other ways, but there's not. If there were,
in our quest to bring to the table issue-based conversation around nationhood and development, we have made 4 to 5:30 p.m. Monday to Friday a perfect time to welcome you into the Situation Room as we continue to build the narrative about public service and accountability.
Mr. President, this Senate needs to know. Mr. President, this Senate needs to lend its voice to the plight of these people. Mr. President, there is nowhere I can say to except here. This is where I am elected. If I cannot say these things on this floor, sir, I better resign and leave.
As elections give the citizens the chance to make their political decisions, constant demand for quality leadership from those they voted into office.
Look at us, man, there is nothing. We are starving. We should please do something.
It's also important to having a Nigeria of everyone's dream. Join Aꜰɪᴄ as it takes to task seasoned analysts, opinion makers, business professionals, and politicians on issues around politics, policies, governance, and leadership. Every Monday to Friday from 4 to 5:30 p.m. on yours super dial, Mainland 98.3 FM will welcome you in your next as we discuss the situations. Headline News on 98.3 Mainland FM.
Good evening. Headline News on Mainland 98.3 FM. My name is Omobola Sandra. President Tinubu and Nigerians mark 2024 Democracy Day in Abuja. Onanuga defends fall at Eagle Square, says President is not Superman. Abiodun vows to uphold MKO Abiola's vision as a unified Nigeria. Soludo backs single term for politicians. Rejects local government autonomy. Japa, stay back to salvage Nigeria, federal government urges doctors. On the foreign scene, UK economy stagnates, heading into general election. In sports, Ten Hag to stay after Tuchel rejected Manchester United. That's the headline news on Mainland FM. Details at 5:30.
You're listening to Mainland 98.3 FM. The sound of Lagos.
To cook correct food, they always give me joy. That's why anytime when they cook like this, I always season them with no cube, and they always enjoy my cooking.
Daddy, I never will. I want more.
You see, all your food with correct vegetables. Come season them with no cubes for that delicious taste. Today, chop better.
Can I win Best Comedian for 5 years? I do so much sponsor. Adult Nation presents Local Laughter Crusade 40 and Fearless. Lagos, are you ready for the best comedian in Nigeria? This talker.
Oh, no, King Solomon for Bible. 700 wives, 300 concubines. Is he shit on them?
He's bringing the best of comedy, music, and wow entertainment to you. This event features Nigeria's finest comedians and musical acts. Date is Sunday, 23rd June at the prestigious Eco Hotels and Suites, Victoria Island, Lagos. Red carpet 6 p.m. and main hall opens at 7 p.m. Tickets regular 3,000 naira, VIP 10,000 naira, executive table 1.5 million naira, premium table 3 million naira, luxury table 5 million naira. Get your tickets online at www.imthistalker.com or ariatickets.com. You can also get your tickets at all Bukahood outlets and Lounge 38 Superlevel. This Talker 40 and Fearless is packaged by A-Town Concepts and supported by
Mainland 98.3 FM. This is the sound of Lagos.
Purified water should cement and confirm. Number one waterproof cement for Nigeria. Ogbonge cement for water love areas. Number one waterproof cement for Nigeria. Purified water should cement number one. Purified waterproof cement. Good for start for water wahala. With Lafayette water should cement water to collect. From down the house, foundation and basement to go. Ogbonge cement for water love areas. Number one waterproof cement for Nigeria.
Put full stop for water wahala. To cook correct food, they always give me joy. That's why anytime when they cook like this, I always season them with no cubes. Come add correct vegetables inside. Ugu, tatasheo, shombo, onions. No way I know they put. Now he make my pikin them, they always enjoy my cooking.
Daddy, I never will. I want more.
You see, all your food with correct vegetables. Come season them with no cubes for that delicious taste. Today, chop better.
Purified water should cement and confirm. Number one waterproof cement for Nigeria. Ogbonge cement for water love areas. Number one waterproof cement for Nigeria. Purified water should cement number one. Purified waterproof cement. Good for start for water wahala. With Lafayette water ships in me, water to collect. If water jam house, foundation and basement to go. Cement, the water run areas. Number one water drop cement for
Put full stop for water wahala. Things seems anxious and uncertain. I understand the hardship we face. I wish there were other ways, but yes, not. If there were,
In our quest to bring to the table issue-based conversation around nationhood and development, we have made 4 to 5:30 p.m. Monday to Friday a perfect time to welcome you into the Situation Room as we continue to build the narrative about public service and accountability.
Mr. President, this Senate needs to know. Mr. President, this Senate needs to lend its voice to the plight of these people. Mr. President, there is nowhere I can say it except here. This is why I'm elected. If I cannot say these things on this floor, sir, I better resign and leave.
As elections give the citizens the chance to make their political decisions, constant demand for quality leadership from those they voted into office.
Look at us, man. There is nothing. We are starving. Tinubu should please do something.
It's also important to having a Nigeria of everyone's dream. Join 𝜰ᴜ as it takes to task seasoned analysts, opinion makers, business professionals, and politicians on issues around politics, policies, governance, and leadership. Every Monday to Friday from 4 to 5:30 p.m. on your super dial, Mainland 98.3 FM will welcome you your next as we discuss the situations.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is still the Situation Room on Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. It's been about 60 minutes of conversations talking about Nigeria's definition of democracy as we commemorate Democracy Day, 25 years of democracy, uninterrupted democracy in Nigeria. We've spoken about a lot of things. We've considered a lot of factors, from the historical overview of Nigeria's transition to democracy, its evolution over time, the Nigerian political class, and even the practice of democratic principles. We spoke about the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, and the call for Constitution review, the Nigerian Senate, or should I say the legislative arm of government. We juxtaposed the practice of democracy in Nigeria and other African countries. We also spoke about the recurring coups that we have in Africa, and also how our ethno-religious diversity has an influence on how democracy is being practiced in this part of the world. We lastly spoke about the impact of democracy on the economy of the country. That was the last talking point before we had to go on a commercial break and also take the headline news. Why, unfortunately, countries that are not practicing democracy seems to be making a mark for themselves. They seem to be making a lot of economic development, but all the countries that are practicing democracy, their economies are suffering. And then we're asking the question, how then can we fully defend democracy if non-democratic nations are the ones that have the upper hand at this time? And again, we made it very, very clear that this is not at all an insinuation of any kind that we don't embrace fully democratic practice in Nigeria. And I did say before we went on that break that we'll be reconnecting briefly with our guest Ibrahim Anoba, who is an African Affairs analyst at the Managing Editor African Liberty, to talk to us about what we can do to strengthen our democratic institutions in the country. If you know the problem, you are one step into solving the problem. You are one step into a solution to the problem. So we have very clearly, in over 60 minutes, highlighted the problems. It's time for us to talk about the solutions to these problems. Ibrahim Anoba, thank you for being on standby. Welcome back, and let's get straight into the conversation of strengthening our democratic institutions. What steps would you advise that we start to follow? And also, how long do you think it would take for us to repair the many damages that we have suffered as a nation democratically?
Thank you, Sage. So, if you ask any Nigerian on the street, they will have ideas regarding how we could change our fortune. But I think five things should be prioritized. First is review how we do elections, because election is the backbone of any democracy, apart from the constitution. If the electoral process is not free, fair, and credible, then you wouldn't have a government that represents the people. And when such government is not having a good day, people will then question. They will say, "I did not elect this government, so I can't persevere because I didn't put the government in place." So open elections is one of the things that needs to be addressed. The second thing is the independence of the corruption or financial corruption fighting agencies, most of the ICPC and the EFCC. If those two organizations are not independent, and we cannot deceive ourselves, they are not independent enough. You have any arrest today of a politician, people cry foul. They will say that's a witch hunt. It seems as though people from the ruling party do not get arrested. It's always from the opposition, blah blah blah. If both organizations are not independent enough, then there will be great resentment whenever an arrest happens. In China today, anti-corruption measures is one of the central tools that China has used to catapult itself as a strong economy. In America, as much as America has its own problem, corruption is a serious crime. Most of it is committed by politicians. So ICPC and EFCC has to be independent. Then again, this might not be popular with people, but regionalization is another thing we have to consider. As I said, the union is a promise. However, we started based on regional government, and it seems as though we had a better reality when we were regionalized compared to this very much unified, centralized system of government. So maybe going back to regions, as the National Assembly is currently considered, could really help us address many of our problems. Because again, many of the problems we have in this country could have been better addressed by the regional coalition. You know, I do not think the farmers elders clash in Nigeria will be solved by the central government. We've tried it; the federal government cannot seem to solve it. Maybe if there was a regional system in place, this would have been better addressed. The same thing goes for state police. If we say we copy our democracy from the United States, America has state police. We don't have local government police or county police. We only have the federal or the national police in Nigeria. I mean, I don't understand how you will bring a commissioner of police who is not from Kwara State, from somewhere in Igbo land or from northern Nigeria to be the police commissioner in a Yoruba-speaking community. I mean, policing is a local job. So reforming our police system is also key. Then lastly is constitution review. I mean, all these things are premised on the strength of our constitution. If the constitution is being promoted as something that can be patched or managed, we are just deceiving ourselves. Many of our problems derive from the constitution, when in fact our fortune is supposed to be deriving from the constitution. Any proper democracy today, you look at what is making them flourish. It's from the body of law that they have. Even if China is not a democracy, you look at what makes China strong today. It's the body of law they have that guides them. So if our own body of law is flawed or is fundamentally problematic, then that has to be addressed. So I think these 5 things, electoral review, independence of RTPC and EFCC, going back to regional system of government, having state police, and lastly, constitutional review. I think these are, some of the baby steps that we can take that could give people assurance and perhaps make this democracy work again.
Right. Well, thank you so very much, Ibrahim Anoba. It's been wonderful conversing with you on this matter. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, because your day is just started, and I appreciate the fact that you were able to factor us into your schedule for the day, regardless of how uncomfortable it might have been for you to do that. We're really, really grateful for your time and also for the knowledge that you've been able to share with us this evening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Like I said once before, we look forward to more conversations with you in future.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, that was the voice of Ibrahim Anoba, African Affairs Analyst and Managing Editor, African Liberty. As much as I would like to keep him on the line to answer some of your questions or engage you as you call in to contribute on the show, we might not be able to do that for reasons I would rather not discuss. But then, thank you very much for listening. And we're back on social media right now. We had a little glitch that caused us to not be able to stream the better half of the show, but we're back now. And thankfully, it's at a time where we can take contributions. So please go to our Facebook platform, join the live stream, use the live chat option and tell us what you think about the conversations we've been having for well over 70 minutes now. My name is Sage Babalola. The phone line is open. Talk to us. Nigeria's definition of democracy. What does democracy mean to you? What do you think about the perspective of Ibrahim Anoba, and what areas do you think we might need to consider outside the 5 solutions that he has preferred to strengthening our democratic institutions in the country? 0913-6000-410. That's how you call in. WhatsApp text message 0913-6000-430. And for our WhatsApp, I beg your pardon, our Facebook and our YouTube platform is at Mainland 98.3 FM. Let's have our first call for the evening. Good evening. Welcome to the show.
Good evening. Good evening, Sage.
Good evening.
My name is Isaiah Kumi. I'm calling from Accra.
Welcome. Go ahead, please.
I've been lucky today with calling into Mainland FM. and I'm happy.
Nice to have you. Go ahead.
Thank you for bringing your resource person. Such an amazing mind, brilliant mind.
I agree.
You know, I was taking notes of all his submissions. And one thing he said jumped at me about the challenge of democracy in modern times. And I would link that thing to the call by Baba Obasanjo for us to have a rethink about our idea of democracy. I said earlier today that the Asians have shown us that you can copy and adapt to your local reality. You don't have to copy everything, not minding your own nuances. Democracy itself is not American. You want to go back to the history. It's Greek. So, even the American democracy itself as it is today was adapted to their own local reality and history. So, Nigeria can also borrow democracy and adapt it to our local reality. The gist of the matter is that government should work for the people. The people, the citizens are the ones that justify the existence of democracy and government itself. So if the people are relegated to the background, every other thing is nonsense, and I use that word very, 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 very cautiously. So, what is the definition of democracy? As it is today, the people are not at the center of democracy in Nigeria. So any attempt to define our democracy must put the people back at the center. However, we want to go about it, we want to structure the country, we want to go in camera, we want to everything we are doing, we should know that democracy is for the people. In fact, the definition says it, government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Thank you very much.
I pray that we are able to get back to that point and get democracy to work for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for calling. We appreciate you. Let's take other contributions. The phone line is still very much open. We still have a few minutes to take your submissions. So if you'd like to contribute, now is the time. 0913-6000-410. WhatsApp text message 0913-6000-430. Let me go to Facebook for a bit. We have messages on our Facebook platform. Tᴏᴜᴛᴏᴀ Michael says, hello Mainland FM. Let's call a spade a spade. If you ask Nigerians to pick one as of today, the government, they might say they prefer military to civilian administration. I say this with all confidence that majority would actually pick the former because of the kind of democracy that our political leaders are now practicing. It is nothing to write home about, and it never will be. It will not bring rapid growth in terms of dividends of democracy to Nigerians because of the high level of corruption and the cost of governance. Also, a situation where the power of the executive seems to be higher than that of the legislature and judiciary is worrisome, and it will not help our democracy to develop. Look at the situation in America, where the son of a sitting president has been charged to court to be prosecuted. Can this ever happen in Nigeria? Happy Democracy Day. God bless Nigeria. My name is Tᴏɪᴛᴏᴀ Onotoye from Ijaghemo community. All right, thank you very much, Tᴏɪᴛᴏᴀ. Let's do the phones for a bit. Hello.
Good evening to you, Babalola.
Prince Wise, good evening.
Thank you, my dear. You see, democracy is very, very good. It's better. If I need to do anything for better,
ministry. People who are accusing our politicians, I know, corrupt check responsibility. But both the military and the civilian, are they both not corrupt, not being corrupted? Look at the way I'm being from Abacha. And the problem we are facing in our own country here, and the same thing goes to some African countries. If you start from 1966, where the Georgia take the power from the civilian. If you have been inefficient in that 1960 today, Nigeria can't be where we are. Because many have no opposition now. The civilian, you have two parties. Every party in one type of opposition that we opposing you. In America today, we have the Democratic and the Republican. If you can win the election, the other side, the other side win. In me, the other one is ready to do well, do better than you. That's the important point. So for Nigeria, for me, the whole trend was continue, and we Nigeria was extra careful. If anything done by the civilian, we only condemn them. Whenever they do something, we let us appreciate. When you condemn everything that do, it means like fighting the military. And we say it's not done. It's not good for us to maintain democracy. Look at African country now. Cleanliness, corruption, make some military to take over. And it doesn't right. So for me, Babalola, let us continue this way. I'm thanking God. We are celebrating 25 years of stable democracy. And I want to commend the mind that we are celebrating today. That's MK Abiola. If the man is the attempt constitution stay there, I'm telling you, we can't be celebrating today. So I commend you, I commend Nigeria that celebrating. Today is the important day. No need of asking any other to correct some government for me.
Thank
that's
you so
my
much.
Good evening to you,
Good evening to you too. Thank you so much for calling. Hello.
Good evening, State.
Yes, good evening.
This is Mark from Agodo.
All right, welcome.
Yes, looking at the one we are celebrating.
Foma, do you mind turning down the volume on your radio? It's a feedback. It's very uncomfortable.
I thought it's Jare. Thank you, Jare.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We are celebrating. How many people are celebrating? It's only the president and his cabinet. People are hungry. There's nothing to celebrate. Nothing. People are hungry. Then he told Ƴɛ̀wò̀ᴜ̀nùᴏ you know the democracy day. Because the reason that the people we vote, we are being denied them opportunity. You know, I follow Fuad and Sandra the other time. He also plays by the standback of the late MTO. If this current president wants to follow what MTO analyze in his campaign, maybe we could achieve a little bit shift in this administration. But since he did not follow it, since we are not here, somebody mentioned the best arrest. If the current president of the United States of America is not being prepared to be sent, can it happen in Nigeria? That is far. But one thing we are just believing God for that, you know, number one, people will vote their mind if INEC is ready to do the needful and the courts are ready to do the needful. At the end of the day, we will get the better candidates. And one thing before I drop, that's Asorok. I'm looking for a president that will not go to that Asorok and go and say, I don't know the power. Immediately they enter that house, then their brain will turn upside down and do another thing. Thank you very much.
Foma, thank you very much for calling me. We appreciate you for your input or for your insight. I'll go to Facebook a little bit. We have Felix Kalu on Facebook who says the situation now is that the president, come on, there's nothing to joke about, so I'm not going to give attention to this message. It's really nothing to joke about. Let's not do that. Basil Chika says after 1 year in office of this president is nothing to offer Nigerians. Chika Bende from Trade Fair. All right, thank you very much. We have Kabiru Adigbinro who says good evening Sage, well done, happy Democracy Day. Nigeria will be great again, I believe. God bless my country. God bless the country indeed. Thank you very much, Kabiru. We have Dayo Dada. Okay, I have to be extremely careful in reading this one. You have a history. Good Good evening, Sage. Is this really a democracy? You can see the difference between Nigeria and the British senators and this one that we have here. All they do, okay. In the US, they work, they do part-time legislation. They discuss with the constituents and they are accessible and accountable, unlike what we have here in Nigeria. All they do is prove their loyalty to this government. Everybody has an agenda. They were quick to pass the national anthem bill and they act like they are above the law. They collect tax from the people. Thank you very much. That's how much I could extract from that message without disregard for the ethics of broadcasting, if you understand what I mean. Thank you very much, Dad. I just didn't want to totally ignore your message, so that's the only thing I was able to extract from that message that was radio friendly, so I'll just stop reading there. Thank you very much. For those of you who'd still like to contribute, we have about 3 minutes of conversation, so if you would like to speak to us, now is the time. You can call 0913600410 as we have a look at democracy in the country and also get your perspective. It's been a conversation that started since the start of the day, and it's reasonable because it is Democracy Day. What else is there to talk about except democratic administration in the country, Nigeria? I'll take one more phone call and then we call it a wrap for this evening. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
God bless you. This is Mr. Chukwudi from Sango.
Welcome.
Yeah. Please, first of all, let me say that the other time that Sandra was speaking, she mentioned that 1983 was the election was sort of controversial. I want you guys, you media people, to avoid that word controversial. MK election was never controversial. In fact, the real controversial election we have had in Nigeria, I don't know how old you are, is this last election that produced this present government. That is the most chaotic, controversial election at my age, I can confidently tell you. Please, where could I mean the father MK election as controversial? It was the best election ever to be held in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, if she says it's controversial, I'm pretty sure she meant it in the context of the fact that it was annulled. And there were arguments. It triggered many arguments. You know, there were dissenting voices. There was a lot of resistance amongst many other things. So I think that's the context in which she used the word controversial. And if that is the context, it's very much applicable. So it was controversial in the sense that, I mean, it was annulled. Many people believe that it was properly done and then it was still annulled. So you understand why controversial might not be inappropriate in that context. But thank you very much. We definitely also understand your point of view. Sadly, I cannot take any more phone calls as we have to leave the studio to allow for the full bulletin of the news to come on air. At about 5:30, we would have the global news aired on the station. My name is Sage Babalola. It's been amazing. It's been over an hour of conversation, and I'm glad that at least we were able to address the most significant parts of this conversation when it comes to democracy in the country. Thank you so very much for all of you who contributed. Many thanks to my guest, of course, and thank you to all of you who still stayed on Facebook despite the fact that we had a glitch. I really would always acknowledge and appreciate your dedication to the station and your interest in the conversations that we have on radio. My name is Sage Babalola. This is the end of Situation Room for today, but of course many conversations will still come your way on the station. Please stick around for the news and of course stay for the many other conversations that will come your way. This is Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos.
Mainland 98.3 FM, your number one radio. Reaching